Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Outlook for June through September 2016. This is Gina McGuire. In this briefing, we'll look at recent weather and snowpack, along with current drought conditions, fuel conditions, global changes to the weather expected this summer, and also the expected weather and fire potential over the next few months. First, if we looked at precipitation across the Great Basin, in May, precipitation was generally above normal in many areas of the Great Basin, which is the image on the left, with the exception of portions of central and western Idaho, into northern Nevada, and over parts of western Utah and the far east side of Nevada. However, if we look back to the beginning of the water year, back to October 1st, really much of the Great Basin saw near to above normal precipitation, again with the exception of central Utah. If we look at our current snowpack across the Great Basin, we still do have snow at the higher elevations. However, it has changed since the end of March, which is the image on the left, which showed near normal snowpack really across most of the area. However, at this point, still Nevada and Utah are carrying what would be above normal snowpack for this time of year. Although the snow has been melting, it will continue to do so throughout the month of June. The snowpack has depleted a little bit more across the central Idaho mountains, where conditions are now below normal. Looking at the current drought monitor, the image on the left, we still do have severe to extreme drought over the western and southern portion of Nevada, with again the more severe conditions in California and into the central Sierra and into parts of the southern areas of the Carson district. As we move further east, we still do have abnormally dry conditions in Utah, but the drought conditions have improved across Idaho and really the eastern half of the Great Basin, with drought being removed across most of Idaho into western Wyoming and even into northeast Nevada. The image on the right shows the drought outlook through the end of August, and the drought will likely continue to persist across California and western and southern Nevada, and again, remain abnormally dry over portions of Utah. Now we'll look at the fuel conditions across the Great Basin, first starting with dead fuel moisture. 100-hour fuel moisture is lowest over parts of southern Nevada that have been drier in the recent weeks, but still really dry over parts of southwest Utah and even southeast Utah and the Arizona Strip as well. As you move further north, fuel moisture is a little bit higher, but it will be decreasing as we move into the warmer and drier period in June. Looking at ERCs across the Great Basin, starting up in Idaho and even transitioning further south into Nevada and Utah, the current ERCs for this year are the magenta lines on all of these graphs. The gray lines are normal, and the red lines are record maximum ERCs over the last 10 years. ERCs are generally near to below normal across the Great Basin, but again will be rising. Looking at live fuel moisture is also near to above normal with the wet conditions we've seen throughout the spring across the Great Basin. Now we'll look at the state of El Niño and what impacts that may have on the weather across the Great Basin as we move through the summer months. First, let's look at the sea surface temperature anomalies off the South American coast, and that's this area right off the coast along the equator that has been very warm recently as we come out of a strong El Niño. However, the sea surface temperatures have cooled significantly and fairly rapidly over the last few months. This image starts in March and transitions all the way through the end of May. So you can see how the ocean temperature anomalies change, and this shows how far above or below normal the current sea surface temperatures are. Again, very warm conditions in these ocean waters signify El Niño, and as we get cooler, the transition to neutral and eventually La Niña will continue to occur. As we now put all these pieces together, we look at our drought, snowpack, live fuels. Now we have to look on what happens in the future, and we'll look at the weather patterns. Over the next few months, from left to right is June through September. The top row is temperature expectations, with the bottom row being precipitation. In June, we'll likely still see some wetter periods at times over possibly the eastern side of the Great Basin with some cooler temperatures, but you can see a much drier and warmer trend developing along the west coast and into the northern and western side of the Great Basin as we move through July. This warmer pattern will allow fuels to critically dry out. The main question as we move through the early part of July into August will be the evolution of the monsoon in the southwest. The monsoon right now looks like it may be on time or slightly delayed, and this will impact possibly southern Nevada into the southern part of Utah, and we'll continue to monitor that as we move into July and August. By September, it looks like more of a warmer and drier regime may set up over much of the west. If we now put all these puzzle pieces together, we come up with our outlook for the Great Basin. In June, as we see much hotter temperatures and the drier conditions that have been continuing over the southern part of Nevada into southwest Utah over the last few weeks will likely continue here through much of the month of June. Therefore, above normal fire potential is possible in those locations, especially in areas that have above normal fine fuel crop. As we move into July and August, this area over southern Nevada and southwest Utah may need to be monitored based on the monsoon. If the monsoon is slightly delayed, we may see activity continue a little bit further into July, and we may have to have an area of above normal. However, otherwise, by July and August, we'll likely see above normal fire potential develop in areas that have more significant grass growth this year than in previous years, of western and northern Nevada into southwest Idaho, and also these areas will likely remain on the drier, warmer side of the Great Basin as we move through the summer months. If we look at the national outlook, you can see where areas of above normal fire potential are expected in June from southern Nevada and southwest Utah and the Arizona Strip into the southwest, and then we see that expansion as we move through July and August into parts of California and the northern and western side of the Great Basin. We are expecting more of a trend to normal fire potential as we move later in the month of September. Here is a summary slide of everything we've discussed during this briefing. Feel free to read it at your leisure, basically indicating that we are expecting above normal fire potential initially for the southern portion of the Great Basin, and then this will likely transition into the northern and western side as we move later in the summer. That concludes our briefing. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.